Back to you. Joining us now, Democratic Congressman Ted Lieu of California. He's a member of both the Judiciary and Foreign Affairs Committees. Congressman, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Wolf.
What role do you believe President Trump's criticism, and it was rather lively over these many months, of Andrew Mccabe played in his departure?
I think it had a significant role. The president has been repeatedly attacking those who are investigating him. Not only is that unseemly and wrong, it's demoralizing to the FBI. And you had Andrew Mccabe, who I've interviewed as part of the House Judiciary Committee behind closed doors. I believe he is a good man who gave his life's work to the FBI, and to have the president criticize him like this is unseemly and inappropriate.
You've read that classified Nunes memo. They're voting on it this hour in the House Intelligence Committee to determine if it should be made public. Does it raise, first of all, questions about Andrew McCabe's behavior?
I can't discuss the contents of the memo, but I can say it's worse than a nothing burger. It's like having nothing mustard. There's factual inaccuracies, it's misleading, and if they're going to release that memo, then they have to release the Democratic memo so that the public has a full view of actually what happened.
And remind our viewers, the Democratic memo does what?
The Democratic memo would be a response to this highly partisan four-page memo that Devin Nunes and his staff wrote.
So you're saying if the Republican memo is released, the Democratic memo should also be released simultaneously. Does that too contain classified information?
So both memos are classified. So I urge that none of these memos be released, because I don't think it's really going to be helpful to the dialogue. But if they're going to release one, they absolutely have to release the other, or else it's just partisan Republican talking points.
What about the Inspector General, Michael Horowitz's report into the Clinton email probe? That's a sensitive issue right now. We anticipate getting some information on that.
Well, I know that the Republicans are trying to impeach Hillary Clinton. She is not the president, so I think we need to focus on who is the president and whether or not Donald Trump conspired with Russia and whether there was obstruction of justice. But I'm happy to review the Inspector General's report when it's released publicly. And I also urge that Andrew McCabe be called to testify publicly before the House Judiciary Committee.
Well, he's about to become a private citizen. Today was his last day over at the FBI. He resigned immediately. So presumably he would be able to appear, right?
Absolutely. And keep in mind, you have a number of FBI officials that have left or retired, and I think that is a reason to have them come up and testify. They can speak their mind. They can let the American people know what they saw.
House Republicans, including those on your committee, we're talking about the House Judiciary Committee, are going to meet with the Inspector General tomorrow. Were you invited? Were Democrats invited, or is this strictly a Republican get-together?
So I was not invited. I have to ask my other colleagues to see if they were invited. But keep in mind, this is about an investigation of someone who is a private citizen right now, Hillary Clinton. I think it's important to know about obstruction of justice of the current president and whether he or his campaign conspired with the Kremlin.
The FBI director, the new one, Christopher Wray, he did read the Nunes memo, the four-page classified memo, over the weekend. They finally gave the FBI director access to it. Does that address the Justice Department's concerns that it would be extremely reckless to release the memo without letting the Department of Justice and the FBI review it?
I agree with the Justice Department that it would be extremely reckless to release the memo. I think it's also important to note that there's reporting that Justice Department does not want this memo released, and FBI Director Wray has read it, and I think he is still of that mind. And keep in mind, it's highly inappropriate to try to release a set of talking points of the Republicans without having the Democratic response.
Well, if they release the Republican memo, presumably the Democratic memo will be released as well. But you know, the President of the United States, he's authorized to declassify whatever he wants. You know that, right?
Yes, he could do that, absolutely.
So if he wants that Republican memo released, irrespective of the concerns expressed in this letter to Devin Nunes, the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, written by the Assistant Attorney General Stephen Boyd, the president can overrule that and say, release it, and then it's released.
That is absolutely correct. The president can declassify, and you have seen that in the past. He's actually given out top secret information when talking to foreign nationals, so he does have that power.
On a separate issue, a very sensitive separate issue, you serve on the House Foreign Affairs Committee. Is the Trump administration complying The law that you passed overwhelmingly last year in the House and the Senate. The president reluctantly signed it into law, fearing that if he vetoed it, the veto would be overridden. It's supposed to be enacted as of today. Are they going to do so? What have you heard?
So the Trump administration has been dragging their feet on Russian sanctions, and hopefully by midnight tonight they will start implementing it. But there's no reason for the President of the United States to continue to thumb his nose at Congress. We passed this law on a bipartisan, bicameral basis, and the President wants to show that he is not conspiring with the Kremlin or with Russia, then he needs to execute these sanctions immediately.
We're standing by. We're waiting to see what, if anything, the Department of the Treasury, the White House, State Department, what they announce on this. Today is the deadline. As you know, Congressman Lieu, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Wolf.
Up next.